Well, good morning, everyone. It is good to see all of you today. Today is a very special Sunday. I'm glad to see you guys. I've missed you all, but I'm not actually bringing the word today. Actually, our good friend Jason is going to be sharing today. Come on up, Jason. Today is known around the nation as Orphan Sunday, and when I first met with Jason and Tracy, they had made it abundantly clear that whatever church they would be solidified in, that church would have a heart and a ministry for orphans and adoption and foster children, and it's been so cool seeing that passion really come to life and seeing some of the families that have been impacted and benefiting by those things. So when this Sunday came, and it just so happened that paternity leave was right in that window, thank you, Jesus, for preparing a way and making this completely possible. So please give Jason a warm welcome, and Jason, it is your time.
Thank you. Good morning. Get set up here. Welcome everyone. If you're new or visiting, welcome. Glad you're here. If you are a regular, you're wondering what I'm doing up here, and trust me, I'm wondering the same thing. As CJ said, my name's Jason. My wife, who normally sits over here, she couldn't make it today, but I believe she is online. We've been attending here for about, thank you. Very good, thank you. We've been attending here for about, oh wow, that's hot. We've been attending here for about a year and a half. We are members here. We have been followers and believers in Jesus Christ for as long as we can remember. We have been plugged into many churches as we've traveled from city to city, state to state, but we're happy we call Christ home. And so, as CJ said, today, and you can see it on the screen, is known as Orphan Sunday. So, has anybody ever heard of Orphan Sunday? Great. If you are not aware, that's what we're here for today. So, Orphan Sunday, as CJ said, is a day that is celebrated in the church worldwide. On Orphan Sunday, that is a day where once a year we hit the pause button within our church and we reflect on God's heart and his passion for the vulnerable. This has been in place in the church for a couple decades now, and Tracy and I have got plugged into that, not necessarily the organization, but just a heart for Orphan Sunday and what it's all about. And Orphan Sunday normally drops anchor on James 1:27, and today will be no different. That is where we are going to drop today. And there's a couple of scripture when I read through the Bible that just stops me every single time and just speaks to me so clearly and is very convicting. This is one of them for me. And so what James 1:27 tells us is this: religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and then also not be compelled by the world. That speaks to me very dearly, and here's a couple reasons why, and some of those details we'll get into here in just a moment. But that speaks to me because it doesn't say when it's convenient, care for orphans and widows. It doesn't say some of us should care for orphan and widows. It implies that we are all to be engaged in caring for the vulnerable, to caring for orphans and widows. And so it's not just for a select few. It's not just for some of us. This is for all of us. And so normally in a message like this, you get a call to action at the end of the sermon. I'm going to give you the punchline now. So the rest of this service is free of charge. So there are a couple things that we can do, all of us can do, to get engaged in caring for the vulnerable, and specifically with orphans and widows. And the first thing is pray. We need prayer warriors. We need prayer warriors for those orphans, those people, those children in foster cares, those children who are in orphanages, and those children who are on the streets. We need prayer warriors for adoptive parents. It is a hard journey. You'll hear some of that today as the journey that Tracy and I have been through. So we need prayer every single day for the people who are following in that path and going down that road. We also need prayer for future adoptive and foster parents as well. It is super easy to say, well, now's not the right time. When I get that promotion at work, then we'll be ready. When we have planned to get a different house, we'll have more room, then we'll be ready. When we can get that bigger car so we can fit that extra seat in, then we'll be ready. In our time, it's never a good time. But if you are being called, God's time is always right, and he will be there to support you along the way. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Could be financial hardships. That house could feel smaller, but in God's time, it's always a good time. So pray for those who are being called down that path. Another area it's where you can engage is to be an advocate. Here in recent history, there was this thing called COVID. It really shut down international adoptions. And today, many of those programs are still shut down. They're not shut down for the same reasons anymore. A lot of them are still closed because of political reasons. Kids should not be pawns. So get involved. Speak to the people in power that can influence and can really have an impact to opening those things back up so that we can bring families who are being called and stepping out in faith in that way can take care of those children. Another way to advocate is to get involved in the Right to Life campaign. Right to Life. How does that feed into this? Well, as we care for those young mothers who are in a difficult journey or in a difficult path, some of them, when we meet them on the backside, we need a family, a forever family that will take those children in and provide that shelter for them, provide a family for them. So advocate, that's another way. A third way to get involved is to provide support. If there's somebody in your community, someone in your family, a coworker, someone in your neighborhood, someone in your church family who is walking through this path through adoption or foster care, provide that support. Provide a meal. As it turns out, kids like to eat. So take some burden off and bring a meal. Leaves are falling. Volunteer, offer to go to their house to rake their leaves. Offer to go into their home, clean their bathroom, organize the playroom for the kids. Any one of those things. If you're very brave, provide respite care. Respite care would be a time where you go into their home or bring the children in for a couple hours so that the parents can go watch a movie, probably fall asleep during that movie, or actually go to dinner, just the two of them to re-engage and talk like adults. And if you're really, really brave, take the kids for overnight so that the parents can have time for themselves and reconnect as a couple and just have a little bit of quiet time. So provide support in some way. And then last but not least, one of the ways is actually get involved. Some of us, not all of us, but some of us are called to get involved in foster and adoptive care directly. Bring in someone into our home and provide a family for them, provide a safe place. As I said earlier, sometimes it's easy for us to say, well, now's not the right time for us. But if we are being called to that, stepping out in faith and just trusting God and trusting the path that he is creating for us is the right thing to do. And if he's calling us now is the right time. So stepping out in faith is another way we can take action. So why is this an ongoing conversation? I had mentioned that this has been going on for decades. It was started in a church in Africa and then has blown worldwide. Here's why this is an ongoing conversation. Worldwide, there's 150 million orphans today. In the United States alone, there's almost 400,000 kids in foster care. 400,000 kids in the U.S. On our own front doorstep, there is 12,000 kids here in Indiana in foster care. And a little bit of statistics, my background, I'm an analyst. I'm a data analyst. That makes me a nerd. It also makes me an introvert, so I'm very uncomfortable up here today. So a little bit of grace as we kind of go through this conversation would be Very much appreciated. But if you look at the number of Christian churches in the U.S. today, if just one family in each one of those churches would step up and offer their home to one of those 400,000 kids in foster care, just one family in each church, the foster care system would be shut down. It would not be needed. That should speak to us. This is a solvable problem. And so, why am I up here today? Why am I authorized to talk about this? I'm not, but God is. And that is for this reason. So really, the rest of the time here today, if you've seen us around, this is our family, Tracy and I. We always sit over there. As I said, I'm a data nerd, so I'm a creature of habit. We will always be found over there. If you see me anywhere else, then you might want to check my temperature because something is not quite right. So my wife and I, Tracy, we have 9 children. When people ask why we have 9 children, I always say because we don't want 10. But the way we got to 9 children is because we have 3 biological children and then we have 6 adopted children. Tracy always said that she has 3 children born of her belly and 6 born of her heart. So if that tells you anything about her spirit, that it paints a pretty clear picture of the type of mother, wife, and believer that she is. And so the rest of this time, we are going to tell you about that journey that got us involved and got us engaged directly into the adoptive mission that God has called us to. A couple things before we jump in. One, with 6 kids, I could keep you here all day. You're getting the Cliff Notes version today. So if you ever have interest in hearing more details, we're certainly happy to connect and go through those things. The second thing is, have you ever seen a movie where there are so many plot lines to where you're like, what is going on here? And then at the end of a movie, it all comes together and you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense. That's our adoption journey. So I have a storyline in this, one family, but I have a storyline in this. Tracy has a storyline in this, and then all of our kids, all 9 of them, I almost said 6. Another thing Tracy says about me, I am a data analyst, but I cannot do basic math. But all 9 of our kids have their own story in this. It is not my place to tell their story. That is their place. So today you're getting my version of our journey. So with that, ready to jump in? Okay, very good. So we have to go back to the beginning. Yeah, they're cute, aren't they? One of these people has not changed a bit, and one of them has gray hair and a beard. Tracy and I are high school sweethearts. We actually started dating when she was 14 years old. At some point in that journey, and I can't remember when it was, but at some point, we were far enough into our relationship to where we were talking about the future. We were talking about our hopes and dreams before life squished those things. We were talking about what our family could look like. And I was sharing that my ideal family situation would be 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and a white picket fence. And she said, I feel called to adopt. She did not say that she has a desire. She didn't say that this is what I want to do. She said, I am called to adopt. Keep in mind, we were dating, so my reaction was, that's awesome. But in the back of my head, this was the inside Jason, I said, once we start having our own kids and getting into our careers and kind of going through life, this will go away. One day, when, I can't remember again when this was, but sometimes in our early 30s, I'm sorry, Tracy is 29 and will be forever 29, but when I was in my early 30s, I came home from work one day and she met me at the door and she said, I'm ready. And I said, great. Ready for what? Ready for dinner, ready for the car we've been talking about buying, and she said, I'm ready to adopt. And for me, I went silent. when I get scared, when I get angry, when I get confused, I tend to shut down. And that's what I did. I didn't know what to say. I was scared to death because if you know Tracy, or when you get to know Tracy, she is a very determined individual. So when she says that she is ready to adopt, this is not, hey, how do you feel about this thing? This is my calling, and we are ready to step out in this. And I was very scared. And but again, Tracy being very determined, we'd started into the process. She started inquiring about what this process looks like, what is needed to get this moving. At that point, we had no idea what our options were. You can adopt domestically, you can foster, you can adopt internationally. We had no idea of what all these details were. So Tracy immediately jumps in and just starts doing research. We started attending classes, we had started attending things, and started to understand what this journey would look like. And so, again, skipping a lot of details, but ultimately, we had landed on international adoption. And if you've ever filled out a mortgage, these days you know there's tons of paperwork. Well, try going through the adoption and foster process. That is 100-time fold in terms of everything you have got to do to prepare for that process. And as I mentioned earlier, I was not engaged. I was scared to death. I was shut down. I did not feel like this was my calling. It was great that it was Tracy's, but it did not feel like it was my calling. So I was very resistant. So this whole time, this was months in the making once we had that conversation to then start getting through and start working through that process. Tracy was on her own. She basically did all the research. She did all the paperwork. She would let this paperwork sit on the counter, and I would let it sit there for days, weeks, before I would sign them and really engage and start in the process. The only thing we agreed on in this process, and we would pray this individually and together, we would pray to God that, hey, listen, if this is what our calling is, that's fine. The only thing we ask for is that we need a healthy child. We had 3 biological kids at the time on our own. We could not handle a situation to where it would divert all of our attention away from the kids we had in our home now to this other child. So our only prayer in this whole process was we need a healthy child. That's the only thing we agreed on. And so I was still resistant through this whole time. Because of that, sorry, let me take a step back. So because of that prayer, in an international adoption process, they have really 2 processes. One is what you would consider a healthy child route, documented, no known issues, healthy as far as you could tell. And in that process, when we started, the adoption agency told us that if you go down the healthy child route, it takes 9 to 12 months. I'm not a spring chicken, so that was a long time ago. It's way longer now. But so Tracy and I said, well, if we were making our own kid, it's about the same amount of time, so that's fine. We can handle that. 12 months turned to 18 months. 18 months turned to 24 months. 24 months turned to 36 months. And had we stayed on the healthy child route, we still would not have a child placed with us today, to this day. So Tracy, along that way, started feeling a tugging in her heart. So she did not talk to me, because again, I had a hard heart. She knew that. So Tracy started actually looking on the special needs list. When you go international, you have an option to look at special needs children. And when you do, you actually can go through profiles of children, and you can ultimately determine what you can accommodate in your home and who you cannot. I remember this day very vividly. I was growing in my career. I worked way too much. And I was getting to the point where I was never at my desk. I was always in meetings or over here, or over there. One day I was sitting at my desk and Tracy sends me an email, which never happens. I opened up this email and it was a picture of a little girl that she found on the special needs list She had a birthmark across the bridge of her nose and on both cheeks. Now we know they call that a butterfly birthmark. And she just sent that picture. And I do not know what came over me at that moment, but I immediately hit reply and said, "That's our daughter." And so for Tracy, that was game on. It was like, okay, now we're moving forward. So at that point, we locked in her file and started pursuing this little girl. And a bunch of details in there, but suffice it to say, we get to the point to where it's time for us to go travel and go meet our daughter. And so just to tell where my heart still was at this time, we've already committed. We are on our way over to China, and I still had a hard heart. I did not feel like this was my calling. In fact, we were on a plane going to China, and I said to myself, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? And then, so we landed in China. By the way, we had an amazing time. This was not a vacation, but this was the best non-vacation vacation we've ever been on. We had such a good time in China. For people that we met that had been through this process, they're like, take jars of peanut butter, take protein bars because the food's not great. You're going to lose weight. Just take some protein that can help you get through the couple weeks you're going to be over there. I put on 15 pounds. I mean, their food was amazing. We had such a great time. So I was still nervous. So the day came, and there's a whole bunch of cool things that happened in this journey that we just won't have time to get into. But the day came to where we were to meet our daughter. We were supposed to go to her, but from a series of they were not coincidences, but of a series of events, they ended up bringing her to us, to our hotel room. And then, so when the moment came, they brought her into the lobby. We came down to our room to meet her. And when I met her for the first time, I instantly got it. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what this is all about now. And she was instantly our daughter and instantly fell in love. One more story, because again, 9 kids. This is one. So we have a lot more to talk about here. But one more story in China. We were on a bus with a tour guide. We went to a lot of cool things. We went to Great Wall of China. We went everywhere in the Beijing area. We were on the bus once, and the guide on the bus said, it is not uncommon for us to see people come back and adopt again. Once you go through this process, once you see the need of these children, you're compelled to come back. And again, inside Jason said, that will not be us. And so again, 9 kids. If anybody tells me God does not have a sense of humor, have them come talk to me, because he does. He knew what this plan was. He knew where my heart was, and he was stepping us through a journey that we were only in the beginning of. I thought we were at the end. This is one of the first pictures. So you see the little girl there, second from my right, your right as well. That is Angel. This was a picture that we took within moments of us getting home. I mean, we were literally home for minutes. If you can imagine, Logan is on the right-hand side. Imagine Angel was not there. Imagine that little girl was not there. Then you had Kaylee and you had Michael sitting there. For years, we thought they were watching SpongeBob. Digital technology, I was able to zoom into this picture. It was not SpongeBob. But so Angel, we put her on the ground. The first thing she did was to walk and plop down right in that open spot. It was just like she was meant to be a part of our family the entire time. And it was like that. And by the way, our prayer to God was answered. She, sassy as all get out, but she just fit right in, and still sassy to this day. But at this point, we thought we were done. Here is where we're going to have to skip a bunch of details. But the start of this story was, I thought this journey for us was over. Over a period of time, again, I can't remember if it was weeks, months. It was probably many, many months. I noticed on Tracy's computer screen, she had this other little girl pulled up. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. We're going through this again. She didn't mention to me. She didn't talk to me about it at all. As it turns out, Tracy got very involved in the online community, a lot of blogs and boards to try to advocate for these kids, particularly children with giant congenital nevus, which is what Angel had. It's basically a large birthmark. So these birthmarks can get very large to where it's anywhere from 15% of your body to 80, 90% of your body is covered with this. So Tracy and I both had a heart for these kids. That's how we found our daughter on this special needs list. But I didn't know that. So when I saw that picture on the screen, I'm like, oh, she's getting that itch again. So we didn't talk about this. We were back home, and by the way, not important, but at the time we lived in Des Moines, Iowa. We were out there for my job, and we were back here where we grew up for Thanksgiving, Christmas, I can't remember what. But we were in the living room of my father's and stepmother's house, and I do not know what compelled me, but I said, we're thinking about adopting again. And Tracy looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, pull up the picture of this girl you've been looking at online and show them. So she anxiously pulled up her phone, showed a picture, and we got home and it was like game on. So she started filling out the paperwork again, which was not her plan. But after I brought that up, it was like, all right, we can do this again. Skip a bunch of details, but suffice it to say, we lost that little girl. Sorry. But that opened the door for two boys. Sorry. Yeah. The other thing about me being a data analyst, I have the emotional intelligence of like a 2x4. But when I tell this story, when I tell our journey, sometimes I get emotional. It's perfectly acceptable to point and laugh. That's okay. That'll help me get through it. So by losing her, tons of details, it opened the door for us to get to pursue two little boys, which was never our plan to bring home virtual twins. That was never in the cards for us. But there's a series of events that God opened doors for this to happen. And I wish I could go into details because it's amazing. Our prayer was the same. So once we decided, or once we got onto God's path, our prayer was the same. We can handle this again. We've done it before. Our only prayer is these two boys need to fit into the family because now we have 4 kids that we cannot divert all of our attention away from. So our only ask and our only prayer, we will be obedient, but it's got to be under our terms. And by the way, one story that will also make me cry again, but as we lost our daughter, and by the way, we say we have 9 kids. In our hearts, we do have 10, because that girl was meant for us in our hearts, but it did open up this other opportunity. So one of these kids, and Tegan, are you okay if I say your name? So Tegan, he shares Tracy's birthday. So I can't remember, again, if this was days or weeks, but our heart was broken over this little girl that we had locked the file in and we were pursuing. And Tracy found this profile of a little boy online that shared her birthday, and she's like, that's our son. And so she called up our agency, and she said, I'm not looking over there, because if I look over there, I'll start crying again. But she called the agency and said, we found this little boy. We would like to pursue him. And the agency said, you are not going to believe this. Out of all of these children we have on our list, we had pulled his file and set it aside because we were thinking of you. It's like, how does that happen? I mean, that is not a coincidence. I mean, this agency's job is to place children in people's home, and they pulled a file and set it aside for us. That is not a coincidence. So, lots of little things like that happen along along our journey. But in this process, when we went to go to China for this journey, one of these boys had a difficult start. Both were 2 years old, but one of them could not eat solid foods, could only eat from a bottle, could not walk, could not talk. When you would try to hug him, he was so uncomfortable. He would scream, he would cry. You couldn't kiss him, you couldn't pat him on the shoulder, you couldn't brush his teeth. He had so many sensory issues, just a very challenging situation. And I'm going to say something that could be somewhat controversial, but for anybody who says that God will not give you something you cannot handle, we could not handle this situation. The only way we were able to get through this was through God himself, leading and guiding us. We were not equipped to handle a situation like this. We're running tight on time. So we were not prepared for a situation like that, but through God's help, we were able to navigate that, still care the best that we could for the kids that we had at home, and provide the needs that they both needed. So this whole time we kept telling God, we will follow you in this journey, but under our terms. And he was chuckling because he said, you don't do this under your terms, we do this under my terms. And I will help get you, I will help lead and guide you through these processes. So if you're keeping track, that's 6 kids at this point. So on the next one, and by the way, Tracy at this point, when we first started dating and got married, she was an accountant. There's a whole funny story around that, but we don't have time for it. But once we started having kids, she stepped away from work. She was a stay-at-home mom. Once we got far enough down our path in our family, we thought we were done. She went back to school and started pursuing her master's in social work, which, by the way, another God calling that matches her personality, her heart, to a T. So she's in the middle of pursuing her master's degree, but we got involved in this program. It's a summer program to where they connected us with some older kids, again from China, who they were having a hard time placing. And we signed up for this not to become adoptive parents, but really to advocate for these kids, bring them into our home, learn about them, because the details on these kids' profile is very difficult. So our job was to learn these kids so that we could advocate for them, so that when people were looking at these files, we can say, the document says this, but this is our experience with these children. And so we went through that. It was a couple weeks and some summer. Time blends together. I can't remember exactly when it was. But then the day come to where it was time for them to go back home, and our job was to kick in to start advocating for these kids. And Tracy and I really do communicate, but not on some of these details. So she never talked to this to me, but she said, I'm done adopting. If we are ever called to adopt again, it's got to be Jason. This was between Tracy and God. Again, we never had the conversation. So she said, if this ever happens again, it's got to be Jason who starts this and initiates it. And it's got to be very clear that this is a real calling. So Tracy and Kaylee were taking this girl back to Chicago to meet with the group at O'Hara to then go back home, and our job was to start. When Tracy was coming back home, the whole day, this is not me, the whole day I was just pacing. Something didn't feel right. So when Tracy was coming home, I sent her a text and I said, we cannot send her home without a family. And Tracy was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm finishing up my master's. I'm getting ready to start my second career. We cannot do this. We can't support this. So she immediately started praying and said, if this is truly your calling, you've got to make this clear for me. And this is part of her story. I don't actually know all the details. I know enough to be dangerous. But suffice it to say, she said, "You've got to give me a sign." And he gave her a sign. And she said, "That's not good enough. You got to give me another one." And he did. By the time she got home from dropping her off, same day, by the time she got home, we were starting paperwork again. And she did this one. I was bamboozled. We ended up adopting 2 kids again. So this little girl that was in our house, and then another little boy. That second little boy, we will not go into details, just for the sake of time. Happy to talk to anybody about it. But it also has very difficult beginnings, and still is very difficult today, with a lot of his challenges that he has. And we were also not prepared for that, and God has also led and guided us through that journey. So if you're keeping tabs, that is 8 kids in the house. We got 1 left. So along this journey, we're crazy. We also got involved in exchange student programs. So I have lost track. I actually need Tracy here. It's been double digits exchange students that we've had in our house over the years, while we're going through adoptions and while we're raising our family and all those things. We thought we were done down this adoption journey once again. And then we ended up with this exchange student in our house from Turkmenistan. Yes, he was from one of the stands. One of the coolest kids I've ever met. Actually, last year, we actually went to Turkmenistan to visit him because he got married, and he invited us to the wedding 4 weeks before the wedding. We made it. Another God moment. I don't know how. But the thing that was special about this kid, he only had one eye. And that was very clear in the profile. When they asked us if this would be a good fit for us, they said he does have one eye. It's not a big deal. And we said, yeah, whatever. Our house is, we have all kinds of situations in our house. Bring it on. It's no big deal. And when we met this kid, along his exchange student journey with us, Tracy came across a profile. I told her she can never go online again. And it was from a little boy in Colombia with one eye. He also had no nose. And, Isaac. And that opened the door for us to adopt again one more time. Again, our hearts did not feel like we were equipped to support a kid with such medical needs. But again, God has a way. So that is a very condensed, I was supposed to move forward and I never did. That is a very condensed version of our story on how we were called into the adoption journey. At least for my journey, I did not feel equipped. I did not feel like we were the right family for this, did not feel like it was the right time for us. But again, stepping out in faith and trusting in God is what led us to where we are today. And that is how our family, ended up with 9 kids. And that is why we are so passionate about Orphan Sunday today. And having been through that process so many times, seeing that number of 153 million kids that do not have a home breaks our heart. And that's why a introvert stands in front of a crowd when he is not comfortable to share his story. So to end this, not all of us are called to foster, which, by the way, we didn't mention fostering a lot because that was not our journey, but the need is still just as strong and is still needed for that as well. But we're not all called to foster. We're not all called to adopt, but we are all called to do something. So my ask is that prayerfully you go to God and you ask, what's my role in this, and what am I tasked to do? So with that, let's go to prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for bringing us together today. We thank you for your heart, for your compassion, for your love for the vulnerable. We thank you for touching people's heart enough to make this a worldwide thing. And we just ask that you give us the courage to step out and do what you're asking us to do, Father. We just thank you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Can I have you stand with us? Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Your connection card. At the bottom, there's a message center. If you want more information about adoption or foster, circle A for adoption on your connection card, circle F for foster if you're interested in that. CJ and the staff will figure out a way to get this to Tracy and I. We are not an expert in how to connect in those ways, but we know people who are. So if you want to hear more about our story, if you have any questions about any of the call to actions we've talked about, or if you feel like you're being called to get engaged, circle that on your card and talk to us, and we'll figure out how to get you connected and where you needed to be. I will be out in the lobby afterwards. If you have questions, happy to answer what I can. Now I'm done, I promise.
Thank you.